Okay, welcome back to my opinion. This little video is going to be about dry firing. And you'll hear it from a lot of sources, a lot of reputable sources, a lot of good sources, that you should dry fire a lot to practice. You know, of course, you have to be safe, you have to make sure the gun's unloaded, point it in a safe direction, etc., etc., etc. But this video isn't about the safety of dry firing. That should be pretty obvious. You have to be very safe if you're going to dry fire, which you should. But here's the thing. Dry firing, most sources, most gun gurus, gun channels, etc., will talk about dry firing being perfectly safe as far as wear and tear and breakage on your firearm. It's not going to hurt your gun to dry fire. Not necessarily. I have found that dry firing is a risky business. I use snap caps and or dummy rounds, preferably snap caps like Tipton or something like that. Really good quality snap caps. Here's the thing, and here's why it's bad for your gun. When you dry fire, your firing pin and recoil, your firing pin and firing pin plunger safety, etc., all those parts are hitting each other. In other words, your firing pin has little grooves in the assembly of the firing pin that is stopped by other parts in the gun, like roll pins. Some roll pins in the gun is this way. Some, like my Beretta, are this way. But if you ever look at your roll pins, and they usually stick out the side of the gun and or the top of the gun. What I'm talking about, I'll show you here in my Beretta PX4. Okay, if you look right there, that's a roll pin at the top there. That hole with the pin in it. Not the one back by the rear sight, the roll pin. Okay, now, sorry about that. Usually roll pins are hollowed out, and what happens is that firing pin assembly gets slammed into a part that stops your firing pin from going all the way up against other parts, including the frame of your slide, other pins, etc. Okay, well, you ask, okay, well, when I fire the gun, am I tearing up my gun by shooting my gun? No, because there's ammunition in the barrel, in your firing pin. What happens is you pull the hammer back or cock the, like in a Glock, the Springer. What happens, this is your barrel, my hand here. What happens is your firing pin gets cocked back, and then it hits what would be a round right in here. Okay, so it stops. It doesn't go any further. Now, the reason it doesn't just shoot on out the barrel and out into the range somewhere is because there's lots of devices in here to stop it, such as a roll pin. So when it goes and hits, it hits the primer of the round and stops, and thus shoots around down the barrel. When you don't have anything in the barrel, what happens is you cock it, and boom, it goes through into the barrel slightly, but it's stopped by other mechanisms like roll pins that hit grooves And over time, and in some cases very quickly, it can chip away at and or bend roll pins or other parts. Like a Glock, for example. A Glock, it's not necessarily the roll pin that you're hitting, like on a double action, single action pistol, like Beretta CZs. But it's still hitting that little plunger. And if you ever get your Glock out and you're cleaning it, look at the plunger. It's got little scrapes on it. The more you do that, the more you dry fire it without a dummy round or a spring-loaded Tipton round or something like that to stop that firing pin from going all the way, to keep it from going further into the barrel where there's nothing to stop it, the more you're likely to tear up something in your gun, chip away, scratch away at. Like in a Glock, it's going to take... It's very unlikely in a Glock. You're probably pretty safe with the Glock doing that. But why do it when you don't have to? Use a dummy round or something like that. Now with double action, single actions, like Beretta, like I just showed you, that's a roll pin. That's a hollow pin. I've never heard of Berettas doing it in my 92s or in the Storm or nothing like that. But the reason I'm so big on this is because I actually have had it happen. I had a CZ PO1. I had two PO1s, and I had a CZ Ramey. One, the roll pin, it dented it in so bad with dry firing. Now, this is, of course, a lot of dry firing. That one day I went to the range and click. Took the pin out, did a little research on YouTube, found out that this happens. Took the pin out, the roll pin out, put a solid steel one in. You can buy those real cheap, so you can do that if you want. But what made me wonder about it is if a company like CZ, it happened to my other PO1 too, it was starting to dent it, and my Ramey, it was starting to dent that roll pin as well. So it would have done it on all three, which swayed me away from CZs entirely. If they're going to put such a low grade, I've never heard of it happening to Berettas. So that tells me it could be a higher grade of steel that they use for the roll pins. But when I looked at the roll pins in the CZs, they were pretty pathetic as to quality. So that made me wonder about other parts of the gun. But anyway, back to the whole moral of the story here. Dry firing, why do it and causing all those metal parts to slam into each other, hit each other, scrape against each other when they don't have to, when you can just put a dummy round or like a Tipton fake round in there to stop that whole part from hitting other parts. But anyway, and then again, you could say, well, I'd rather do that than it tear up my firing pin, the tip of my firing pin. If it was going to do that, it's going to do that on your regular rounds because it's going to hit regular rounds, the primer of regular rounds. And like on a Tipton, it's spring loaded, so it's made to actually give just a little bit when you hit the primer on it. But that's my opinion on it. Let me know in the comments if you've had this issue and you've heard millions of times it's perfectly fine to dry fire your guns. Now, there are certain guns and rimfire guns you should not dry fire, obviously. Older guns, etc. But, honestly, you can get, dummy rounds, etc. really cheap. Just use one of those, in my opinion. Like, share, and subscribe. Thanks a lot, guys. Bye.